Hey guys, so a lot of you have been asking me for my opinion on Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. So I figured that the best way to share my opinion was just to put it in a review video like this. I will be trying to keep it relatively spoiler free for the first half, but the second half I'm going to have to talk about plot points and spoilers, otherwise I'm not going to be able to review it properly. So I will let people know when that second half is coming up, and that way you can decide whether you want to watch it or not. Here is the book. Obviously it's a script book, not an actual novel. I don't really want to talk about the plot too much because you can just Google it and find out. Basically the story follows Harry's child Albus Severus Potter as he goes to Hogwarts and his friendships and stuff like that. The book brings back a lot of our old favourite characters, which some may like that. Personally I don't, but I will go into that later. I have got my phone here, so if I keep looking down at that, or if you see my phone in the video, it's just because I've got dot points written down on things so that I don't forget and then get really annoyed later. There's basically two main things that I have to acknowledge first. This book is a script book and not a novel, so that really is going to affect how not only you read it, but how the storyline's portrayed, how the characters are portrayed. Without actually having the actors behind the characters, it can lose a lot of depth. So I think obviously keeping that in mind, this review really is just as a script book. I'm still going to see the play when I get the opportunity. The play could be spectacular, I'm not really sure, but just from reading the little descriptions of what happens, that's obviously intended to be on stage, I think it would be very impressive. That's whether you like the storyline or not, I think that it would be very theatrically well done. Second point is that I am very good at separating different elements of the Harry Potter story. So for example, obviously the movies and the books. I don't really, obviously they tell the same story, but I kind of keep them separate in my mind just in regards to disappointing factors that don't link up in both. The movie's going to cut a lot of things out of the books, and that's fine, that's always going to happen. In my opinion, I think if they put everything in, it just would be ridiculous. It would be way too long. As much as I would love to watch an 8-hour movie of Harry Potter, for people that aren't as hardcore fans, it's not going to be as good. So obviously with this part of the story, it's kind of the same deal. It is a little bit different because it's new knowledge and new insight into the story. However, like, I'm not going to get mad at it because it doesn't link up with something that was said in the books completely, or movies, or whatever. Okay, so I will say this. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I honestly, I'm still trying to figure out if I just enjoyed it, but I do think that there are more things that I disliked than I liked, which, without going into spoilers, my biggest problem with this is the storyline, which is obvious, but the main focal point of the storyline, I personally just think is ridiculous. To me, this reads as a fan fiction. I am not into that. I don't even like fan fiction, I really don't. When it comes to Harry Potter, I want stuff that comes straight from JK or nothing. And that's not me being bratty, I just don't find enjoyment out of fan fiction. Unless I can take my own opinions of the world and put my own thoughts and feelings into it, but other than that, unless I hear something and it comes straight from JK herself, I don't really like to take it on board. Just my thing. If you like fanfiction, that's awesome, that's great. But the plot line for this reminds me of a bad fanfiction, not even a good fanfiction, a really 2008 bad fanfiction. A few months ago, I was reading an article and it was a theory of what the play was going to be about. This is obviously before any knowledge actually came about, other than the fact we knew that it followed Harry's children. And when I was reading this article, I laughed. I actually was oh my god, this is ridiculous. This is so stupid. That would never happen. Oh my god. And it turns out that that is the plot. It just felt like the characters weren't themselves. They said things that are out of character, they did things that were out of character, and the main plot point in this story is something that I think is completely out of character. And if I can't even believe that that thing would happen in the first place at all, how can I then kind of invest myself in a whole story regarding that? Even Hermione like does something that I just think is really stupid and, you know, wasn't thought out like Hermione would think it, and it just really bugged me. It felt like Ron was there just like as a joke. Like, he wasn't a significant character. He didn't have his own like personality that we know and love. It was literally just like there to make cheap jokes, which is unfortunate because the whole reason we love Ron is because he's so much more than that. Another thing that I didn't like about this was that all of the characters pretty much were jerks, like absolute jerks. And I mean, like Harry, his son, like Rose Weasley, like there was honestly like one character that I really truly was like, yeah, you're cool. And that happens to be Draco's kid. As far as the characters not being themselves, I mean, obviously they're not played by the same actors, but I liked to read through it and try and pretend like I could hear, you know, Emma Watson reading Hermione, just because for me, that was the only way that it was going to feel like it was the same story, especially with how out of character they were acting. So I was trying to like put it in my mind, like imagine older Hermione with Emma Watson's voice. But when you're literally waiting for years on end for a new chunk of the story, I think, you know, a lot of things aren't going to stand up to your expectations. So this book had a hard run. Before I move on to the spoiler part, basically this did not feel like a J.K. Rowling story to me. Obviously she only wrote part of it, or she only had some input, but I really wonder how much input that was. Frankly, I'm hoping it was quite little, because I really don't like to think that Jo imagined the rest of the story happening like this. So basically, I'm happy that we've got a new part of the story. However, I'm probably not going to be able to take this next part of the story as actual canon. I think there were elements of the book that were quite cool. It was kind of cool to see some of the characters brought back in an interesting way. But ultimately, the main points of the storyline I really don't like, and I just can't accept it in my head as how the characters would actually behave or what would actually happen. I think it's probably worth a read if you love Harry Potter, because it's still in the same universe, and personally I still just love things that are in the same universe. That's what I'm excited about Fantastic Beasts. But yeah, as far as continuing the story, this just isn't what I would hope for in the book, basically. Okay, so moving on to the spoiler part of the review. Spoiler warning, spoiler warning, spoiler warning, spoiler warning. Okay, you've been warned enough. Plenty of time to click off the video. Alright, let's talk. What was with this storyline? For those of you who haven't read it yet but are still okay with hearing spoilers, basically the whole thing revolves around Voldemort having a child, which is a concept I just find absolutely ridiculous. That's what I mean when I say fanfiction-y, like, oh, and Voldemort had sex with Bellatrix and they had a child together right before the Battle of Hogwarts, and come on. I cannot imagine Voldemort ever even wanting sex. Not so much in a, he just didn't feel the need way or anything like that. Like, obviously he had more important things going on than caring about that. But even like in a way of him wanting an heir, like I just don't even really consider that a thing, because he never really cared about family, and Voldemort was very self-indulgent. Like, he cared about what was happening to him, when, how, when, whatever. And also he was, you know, he was intending to live for as long as he possibly could. Why would he care about what an heir does after him? But the most important reason why I can't imagine Voldemort ever having a child is because I actually cannot comprehend him ever being capable of being intimate enough to have sex with somebody. I just feel like that's an act for him that would be very uncomfortable. The next point is the reuse of time turners. I just feel like that was unnecessary. Like, obviously that's what the whole story is about, so it was necessary in that sense, but I just think that it's completely possible for them to tell a story without having to rehash storylines and characters like they did. We had Snape come back, Dumbledore, Cedric, Amos Diggory, like, we had Umbridge, like, all these characters who just really, like, we didn't need to see them again. I feel like Snape had his part, whether you like him or dislike him as a person. P.S. he's totally a dick. But whether you like him as a person or not, his storyline was wrapped up very nicely, I think. To bring it back like that, and to bring it back in a way where, I don't know, I just think he was really trivial. Like, oh, he gave himself again for a Potter, and he said a bunch of the whole crap about loving somebody all over again, and it was just so cliche to me. The same goes with Dumbledore. Like, although I didn't mind so much how Dumbledore was brought back, because, Harry would ask him his portrait for advice, I understand that. The whole rehashing of what Harry and Dumbledore's relationship was actually cringeworthy to me. It's like, the writers had seen fans discussing whether Dumbledore was a good person or not, and how he treated Harry, and whether he should have left him with the Dursleys and everything like that, and then just put it into the book or into the play, whatever. That whole emotional heart-to-heart wasn't for it. Right, let's move on to the fact that Harry was an absolute dickhead in this. There's no other way to put it. The way that he treated not only, like, his son, but McGonagall. Like, the things he said to McGonagall about her not understanding because she had never had kids, that is the biggest joke. Like, he wouldn't even dare say that to her, let alone threaten her with the ministry and all that kind of crap. Not to mention some of the things he said to Albus, the fact that he tried to stop him and Scorpius from ever speaking because he genuinely thought that Scorpius was bad. Like, sorry, I just had to restart the camera, so if I'm sitting really differently, apologies. Anyway, Harry is not so stupid that he would think that his son Albus, who he has known for 14 years on this planet, is completely innocent and that Scorpius is corrupting him. And he also knows better than to try and cut him off from his only friend like that. And how that would feel for Scorpius. Like, Harry knows what that is like. That's so stupid. That's like what the Dursleys would do to him. He is not like that. And then the ultimate, like, what he said to Albus, not wanting him to be his kid. Come on, he wouldn't say that. I don't want to imagine that he would say that, because that's not the Harry that I grew to love. Like, and Harry wasn't without his flaws. He wasn't a perfect character, for sure. But he also, when the main series was following him, was going through his teenage angsty, crappy years. And at the end of the day, he was a good person who really was just trying to do what he thought was best. So for him to be so nasty to people, I just don't believe it. Speaking of dick characters, like Albus, the main character, Albus Severus Potter, who it's all surrounding, was a little shit. What the heck? Like, why did he even hate his dad so much? I really don't understand. I get it would be difficult to live in Harry's shadow. I get it would be difficult to be sorted into Slytherin when your dad's probably the most famous Gryffindor there ever was. But it's not his fault that you're getting bullied, kid. Like, step back. I can't believe that Harry and Ginny would raise a kid that is capable of being like that. Once Harry was obviously being a dick to him back, I get it. Like, yeah, okay, there's gonna be animosity. But, like, was it literally just the fact that you were sorted into Slytherin? Was it the fact that you were being bullied? Because then I don't understand, because why wouldn't home be the happiest place for him? What I really want to know is, what was Albus and Harry's relationship like before he went to Hogwarts? Were they happy families? Were they best friends? Because before he started, and we see them at the train station, he was asking Harry for advice. He seemed to have a good relationship with Harry. So why is it that he's so resentful to him now? Like, I just don't get it. Oh yeah, let's talk about the fact that Hermione was just not Hermione. Like, she was boring AF. Not even just in the sense of was interested in knowledge and books and smarts and that sort of stereotypical crap, but she had no depth to her character. To be fair, I felt like none of the characters actually had depth to them. The only one who I actually like could fully imagine and like care about was Scorpius. But all the characters that we know and love, like, you have to get their personalities exactly right, and I just think missed the mark. What was with the fact that Hermione hid the only time turner to her knowledge left in existence in her office, and then the way that you find it is to go through some books and answer some simple as fuck riddles? Seriously? Like, does she actually think that that's a smart way of concealing it? And it was a rumour that the Ministry was concealing a time turner as well, so, like, if the kids could do it, what's stopping another Ministry official from just entering? And do you think that they wouldn't be able to figure those out? I just think after, like, all the times that Harry, Hermione and Ron broke through all those things, I mean, like, the Philosopher's Stone, like, even just that was so much more secure. You'd think she'd learn from things like that, not do stupid ass. Another thing that I don't quite understand either is that why in the alternate universe, after the first time change, did Ron marry Padma? Like, I thought the whole point, whether you agree with the fact that Ron and Hermione should be together or not, the whole point of the story was that they had this love that, you know, was always there even when they didn't talk about it. It's not like it grew only in the last 2 years. It was hinted at in Prisoner of Azkaban. So why then, if he had feelings as early as the 3rd book, did he go to the Yule Ball with her, set in the 4th book, and then decide that he liked Padma better? Just from dancing with her? And then enough to marry her as well? Like, I just literally cannot understand that. Especially because the last 2 years that they would have been going through, like, their Hogwarts years, all of the stuff still happened. He clearly doesn't love Padma or want to really be with her. He clearly still loves Hermione because he makes that weird gesture to her about how her hair looks nice or whatever it is. So I just don't really understand why he decided to marry Padma. There's a lot of like random stuff like that that just didn't quite line up and it didn't make sense. And I get that it was an alternate universe, but those alternate universe things still have to like make logical sense as to why they would happen from one small change. So basically, obviously you can tell I wasn't happy with the characterization. I wasn't happy with some of the main plot points that were happening in this. And I just felt like this was the Harry Potter universe, but it wasn't Harry Potter, if you know what I mean. Like, it was the magical universe that we know, but I don't think it was the characters that we know, and I don't think it's a story that makes sense. Personally, I find a lot more enjoyment out of the little backstories and little side pieces that we got on Pottermore than I did from reading this. There were a few little moments that I liked. Obviously I love just them going back to Hogwarts in general, and I liked getting a taste of the universe again, but I don't know, I just can't imagine that this is really what happens when Harry becomes an adult. I'm gonna have to wrap it up here. Sorry if this review sounded so negative. At the end of the day, like I said, I think I enjoyed reading it. There was just a lot of things I disliked about it. If you have read it, please let me know what you think. I'd love to open up a discussion about this. Thank you for watching. Bye guys.